BBOR Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia at heart and from around the globe. And hello everybody, today is Friday, another Cooper Friday. Welcome to the show. How's everybody doing? On Fridays this year I've been talking to you guys about D.B. Cooper, the man responsible for the only unsolved skyjacking in U.S. aviation history. And for this episode, I have to give a shout out to Lehman, who sent me something at the email address blackboxonlineradio@aol.com. Anybody can use that to get in touch with the show. And he asked me if I was familiar with Chael Sonnen's D.B. Cooper theory. And my honest answer was no, so I began to explore. And I will come back to the emails from Lehman because he's made a lot of observations. But firstly, Chael Sonnen is more famous for being a former UFC fighter, and I used to watch a lot of UFC back in the day, and Chael Sonnen was equally famous for being a media personality. And Dana White of UFC famously said that Muhammad Ali was hands down the best fighter who also created a media personality, the best fighter to get in front of the microphone and put on a show. And the second best was Chael Sonnen. And I was just thinking, oh my goodness, will you shut up, Dana White? This is why people do not like you. Well, that and those sexual assault allegations, we could do a whole show on that. But we won't, because we're talking about D.B. Cooper right now. But seriously, the best on camera, in front of the microphone personality after Muhammad Ali. I mean, I would even put Mike Tyson above somebody like Chael Sonnen, and that's not even counting things like the WWE. Almost everybody there is well above him. But in all fairness, Chael Sonnen did make us laugh. He was good at poking fun at interviewers, and he was also good at developing his own broadcasting style. And I'm going to play a clip from Chael Sonnen in just a second where we can see him sharing his D.B. Cooper theory, because this is a different type of theory. It's mostly based on stories that he has acquired, and the long and short of it is that D.B. Cooper's identity is a closely guarded family secret in the Sonnen family. So I'm going to play the clip, and then we will respond.
The D.B. Cooper story was true, by the way. I mean, I throw that in on the back of telling you a bunch of other wild and crazy stories, but that those are all of the interesting things of my whole life, but all of those things.
You know the D.B. Cooper story?
No, who's D.B. Cooper?
D.B. Cooper is the most famous hijacker of all time. He hijacked a plane that left Portland, headed for Seattle, and he handcuffed himself to a flight attendant. Then he opened his briefcase. This is before you had metal detectors and stuff to get on airplanes, and it was what he led her to believe was a bomb. So he had him set the plane down, bring $200,000 in cash and 2 parachutes. So they took the plane off. He took the money, put one of the parachutes on, and jumped.
Oh, and they never found him?
Never found him.
Never got found.
And you met him?
Yeah, no, he's my sister's godfather. Yeah, just a regular guy.
Not your godfather too?
No, just hers.
But your parents know him.
But
yeah. Why? He's dead now. But yeah, it was a big deal. It was a big deal at the time. Then, like, every 10 years, somebody comes out with a new story on D.B. Cooper. Netflix just came out with one. They never have any new information.
Chael Sonnen just came out with one.
They never have any new information. It's the same information. Then you get a new producer that comes along. Well, there was a couple of things, which is the flight attendant said that he was Hispanic, and she told that from day one. And the FBI was putting out composite drawings, and they always had her as a Caucasian. And she would tell anyone that would listen, which wasn't very many people. You know, there was no internet, there was no Facebook back when this happened. She had a hard time getting an audience, but anybody that would listen, she said, I don't think he's Caucasian, I think he's Hispanic. And he was Indian. So, I mean, that she was very close on her ethnicity.
Let's fucking go!
So he had some of the dark features. You know, I think he had on like a fake mustache or something along
pseudonym.
those lines. Yeah, and so, but that was one of them. And then a big thing when they never found him and they never found the monies, they tried to say, well, he would have died. He jumped into this forest, and between the wolves and the bears and the fall itself, he would have died. But what they didn't understand is, and it relates back to his ethnicity of being Indian, is that was all government land, tens of thousands of acres.
Native American.
That backed to native land. So he jumped into his own backyard. He jumped into where he camped so he knew exactly where he was. And the FBI spec, when they never found him, they tried to sell it on the world. He might not have even made it out. And I think he had a motorcycle. That part is me making that up because he used to race motorcycles. I didn't get a motorcycle down there, drove right home. It was only a 3-hour drive.
Did you speak to him since the...
I spoke to him many times. Yeah, I wasn't even born until, 27 years after this happened. He was my sister's godfather, yeah.
And how was it disclosed to you that he was D.B. Cooper?
Well, my aunt told me. My aunt told me that he was D.B. Cooper, and my aunt asked him. They're from a really small hometown. I mean, maybe I jumped in a little late on the story. They're from a very small hometown. Like, for example, there was 13 people that graduated in their class. They played 5-man football. It was a really small hometown. Most of them had never been on an airplane. A lot of them had never even seen an airplane. This guy was taking skydiving lessons. Like you had mentioned that to the group. This would be the hottest thing from this town. You're jumping out of an airplane. He didn't tell anyone. Saying these very private lessons. And so they found out. They found a photo, and then they had to ask him, and he finally copped that he was. And it was just the whole thing was weird. It's like, why wouldn't you tell us that? And then the whole D.B. Cooper thing happens. They come up with a composite picture, and it looks just like him. I mean, all the dots start connecting. And my aunt said to him, "Are you D.B. Cooper?" They were having dinner, Lee's Kitchen in Tualatin, Oregon, and he said no. He said no, but everything got weird. The whole table got really weird. It was my mom and dad, my aunt and uncle, he and his wife. So a couple of days later, he went over to my uncle's house, and he said, "Hey, about what she asked me." And he said, "She's not the only one that's put this together. The FBI's already been to my house." So he went into hiding, which all he did is went to Arizona. But it was a very different time back then, right? You could rob a bank and move 2 towns away back then and live the rest of your life. You put a bed, little handkerchief, you'd never get caught. So he went to Arizona for about 7.5 years, and he came back. He ended up passing away about 4 years ago.
Did he live... Was he like pretty rich?
No, that was another thing. Is he had a minimum wage job. He was a night watchman, is what he did. But then he came into they were into shotguns. He came into these over-under shotguns that were expensive, and some 4-wheelers and a motorhome. There just started being these toys all of a sudden that popped up. And my parents had known it was like, hey, wait, where's this coming from? And he told them that he got Indian money. He said, because I'm Native, every year I get money, which is true. He had enough Native blood that he was getting, but then that came out too, and that was $1,200 a year.
And one more time, those were the words of Chael Sonnen, a former UFC fighter. And before we truly get under the surface with his D.B. Cooper suspect, we have to respond to that clip and just play the game. It's almost like going back to elementary school, where you have a picture and the teacher's just asking you, okay, what's wrong with this picture? What's wrong with this story? Well, firstly, he claims that D.B. Cooper boarded a plane with a pair of handcuffs, and he handcuffed a stewardess to him and then told her that he had a bomb. Almost certainly that's untrue. What it appears actually happened is that D.B. Cooper gave a note to the stewardess saying that he had a bomb, and she didn't think anything of it, so she put it in her pocket. She thought maybe it was a phone number and he's trying to flirt with her. But then he said that she should read the note, and that's how she learned that it was a skyjacking. And other things that Chael Sonnen points out. He also says that D.B. Cooper requested 2 parachutes, but D.B. Cooper actually requested 4 parachutes, although I could easily see how Chael Sonnen was making that type of confusion. He also said that D.B. Cooper was wearing a fake mustache, and I don't even want to press him too hard on that one, because a lot of people believe that D.B. Cooper was disguising his appearance some way, somehow. But let's look at the long and short of Chael Sonnen's D.B. Cooper theory. It's something that he learned from a family member, from his aunt actually, and that this person, who is the godfather of his sister, was confronted about this, and he denied it, but he denied it in a way that didn't seem very convincing. So this would be that D.B. Cooper boards a plane in Portland on November 24th of 1971, flying towards Seattle. Then he sets up the hijacking, and according to Chael Sonnen's theory, it appears that he knew the whole time exactly where he was going to jump. He knew where he wanted the drop zone, this whole stuff about the plane's going to land, and then he's going to refuel and just try to get to Reno, Nevada, or originally to Mexico. That was all a ruse, because he knew exactly where he was going to jump over southern Washington. And if I've understood this theory, and I've watched a lot of other videos from Chael Sonnen on this, and it's that he would have jumped out of the plane, again, over the Columbia River, roughly, and then he would have landed somewhere in the Gifford-Pinchot National Forest. When Chael Sonnen is talking about how there's government land or federal land, he's referring to the Gifford-Pinchot National Forest, and that D.B. Cooper would have had to have known exactly where he was at the time of the jump, perhaps due to estimations, perhaps due to the time that the plane would have been in the air, perhaps due to the flight path. in that he would have landed successfully and survived, and that he had a motorcycle station nearby, although he admits that that was speculation. In a different interview, I believe it's on the channel MMA Clips, it's a segment of the interview that he did about D.B. Cooper, he stated that it was not his own hypothesis or his own theorizing that D.B. Cooper took the motorcycle to drive home, but he stated it was actually his father's idea first. I mean, you can see that he's kind of going back and forth between the particular types of observations. Okay, so D.B. Cooper lands in the National Forest, gets on a motorcycle, and he drives through the Yakima Reservation. I was looking at the possible locations of this quote-unquote Indian land, as he calls it, but let's just call it a Native American reservation, because it appears that's what he's referring to. And he would have taken the motorcycle through the Native American reservation on roughly a 3-hour drive, and he would have just made it home. But another interesting note about Chael Sonnen's D.B. Cooper theory is that he believes that D.B. Cooper spent the money, that he went down to Arizona to lay low, and he ultimately ended up spending the money, and that's how he was able to obtain things like vehicles and four-wheelers. And I also think that that's somewhat of a stretch, but I mean, I guess it's not impossible. For the longest time, I was just under the impression that the money was never spent. When D.B. Cooper obtained the $200,000, all the serial numbers on the bills were marked. At first I thought, nope, there's no way he spent the money. I mean, the money was either lost in the jump or it was confiscated by maybe the CIA or something if they were involved with it. Or maybe even something to the effect of just he decided that he probably had the awareness that the serial numbers would have been marked, countless reasons about why he wouldn't have spent it. And I hope that made sense, that he would have recognized that the serial numbers would have been marked, so if he were to spend the money, he would have been apprehended. And also just the fact that we have to remember the possibility that D.B. Cooper could have died in the jump. He landed somewhere in a very remote place and just nobody found the body. Okay, though, so D.B. Cooper goes to Arizona and he's spending the money on, well, himself and so on, kind of doing it rather gradually. Maybe, just maybe, the serial numbers weren't documented as well as they said they were. Maybe, just maybe, there wasn't as much focus on the serial numbers of the money as they say they were. And that ultimately, this guy would go on to become the godfather to Chael Sonnen's sister. An interesting thing, though, is that he stated that he was born 27 years after the D.B. Cooper skyjacking, and somebody wrote in the comment section directly under the video that Chael Sonnen was born in 1977, so it wouldn't have been 27 years. I mean, I didn't even think twice about that when I heard it. I mean, I'm not really paying attention to how old Chael Sonnen is, but he would have been 6 years old in 1977, or let me rephrase that. He would have been born 6 years after the skyjacking, not 6 years old. He would have been born 6 years after the D.B. Cooper skyjacking. What do we make of this? What do we think of this? Firstly, I have to give full credit to Lehman for sharing the story with me, and two, give respect where it's due. Lehman claims that he has identified the person who is Chael Sonnen's D.B. Cooper suspect, and Chael Sonnen has said that he has since passed away. The guy passed away in Arizona a couple of years ago, but Lehman says that he has identified the person. He has followed the paper trail through the small high school that was in Oregon that had the small football team, and I was really surprised, though, when I was reading these emails that I was receiving, because Chael Sonnen was saying that there was this small high school that had a 5-man football team, and Lehman actually tracked it down and said that it was either 6-man football or 8-man football. And I was like, well, why are you challenging some guy like Chael Sonnen on that? Because obviously he would remember that, right? No, I don't think so at all. I really don't think so. This guy just seems to be all over the map with his information. He seems like someone who is a little bit familiar with the D.B. Cooper case, but he can't keep all the information straight. So I think that he can't keep all of these things straight. And also in that MMA Clips interview that I was just talking about, he was saying that he was not revealing D.B. Cooper at first because of some type of oath that he had with his father, or that it was just a closely guarded family secret. But after his father passed away, he felt like the oath was no longer in place. And, I mean, just when I'm hearing that, I think that maybe he meant that he had some type of agreement or understanding with his father that he would not go public with the name of this person whom they believe was D.B. Cooper. So, and that after his father passed away, he openly admitted that he liked the attention and he wanted to play a game with it, which I think is horribly irresponsible. I mean, if you actually have evidence about an ongoing case, you actually have something that you could bring forward, I just don't really know if that's the best thing to do. And it really seems like he's doing this for entertainment purposes. And a lot of you might be wondering, why are you talking about this D.B. Cooper suspect? Why are you talking about this? Isn't this just kind of like going too far off the map? My honest answer is, here on Black Box Online Radio, firstly, I try to approach every true crime theory with an open mind. Secondarily, I try to leave no stone unturned. If someone is proposing a theory, then I will try and hear them out. And in all seriousness, I actually think that Chael Sonnen is telling the truth about the story. That there is this family story that somebody was confronted about being D.B. Cooper and then they denied it in a suspicious way. And later on, they came back and confessed to it. If you go over to the Cooper Vortex and listen to Darren Schaefer, he'll just have countless stories about people who have confessed to being D.B. Cooper, who have confessed to being the perpetrator. I mean, the entire Walter Recca theory is centered on how someone made a recorded confession of being D.B. Cooper. But as I said, I really try to explore all aspects of this particular mystery, and I talk to you guys about D.B. Cooper every Friday. I also do a segment every Monday about the Zodiac Killer, Zodiac Monday, and one about Jack the Ripper on Wednesdays, Ripper Wednesday. And if you want to follow along with all of these true crime discussions, you can hit the like button and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. You can also go through some of the links in the description box. One of them is for buymeacoffee.com. Buymeacoffee.com/blackboxnid88 allows you to make a donation or a contribution to help support the show. And anybody who makes a donation will get a shout out on Zodiac Monday. And for the summer, I will be coming to you guys live every Tuesday and Thursday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for True Crime Talk Radio in the morning. And those are open discussion shows where people can put anything in the chat. I'm trying to make the title features of those focused on criminology, forensics, criminal psychology, so that people can ask questions about any particular subject and we can try and relate them to, well, some of just the basics. So lots of things to explore here on Black Box Online Radio, and one more time, please like and subscribe. Now, back to this Chael Sonnen story. I think that one of the most interesting aspects of it is he believes that D.B. Cooper was part Native American. In the clip that I played, he says flat out that D.B. Cooper was an Indian. And, I mean, clearly he means a Native American, but in other parts of YouTube, such as the MMA Clips interview, he stated that he was part Native American. I think that that is a much more reasonable thing in all seriousness, because when you look at the composite sketches of D.B. Cooper, no matter what Chael Sonnen says, he doesn't 100% look like a Native American. And what Chael Sonnen is talking about when he says that there is this type of statement from one of the flight attendants who was on the plane with D.B. Cooper, that he looked like a Latino, I think that the closest we can get to the truth is that D.B. Cooper had an olive-skinned complexion. Now, no matter whom your suspect is, that doesn't mean Latino, that doesn't mean Native American, that doesn't mean mixed race of any kind. But this seems like the consensus that people have understood, that D.B. Cooper had an olive-skinned complexion. And that's why some of the composite sketches are even darkened a little bit. And, I mean, I don't know if there's sufficient evidence to say that D.B. Cooper was a Native American, or as Chael Sonnen said, clarified in a later interview, part Native American. And interestingly, though, he says that he chose to go public with this story because he was writing a book the way that a lot of celebrities and athletes do, and he wanted to include the story about D.B. Cooper because he was asked to share something that wasn't about MMA fighting. He said the whole book was about fighting and training and exercise, and they just said, you gotta have something different in the book. He's like, well, actually, I know the identity of D.B. Cooper, and it's a closely guarded family secret. Now, I hope you guys understood me. I hope that that came across as something that was clear when I said that I believe that the story happened. I mean, I believe that the conversations happened. I believe that his family had talked about this. The way that he tells the story, it sounds like those things are actually somewhat consistent. And as we've said, many people do claim to be D.B. Cooper, even more so than some of the other criminals out there. But I just think that he's so rough on all of the specifics. That's why I wanted to try and evaluate it from a different angle, looking at the drop zone, looking at the motorcycle, looking at driving through the Yakima Native Reservation. And as far as that goes, I think it would have been extremely difficult, but not impossible, to have a specific place in mind, because when people say that, D.B. Cooper couldn't have had a boat stationed somewhere, he couldn't have had a car stationed, he couldn't have had the motorcycle stationed, it's because the parachute that D.B. Cooper was using was one that wouldn't have been very easy to maneuver. And Chael Sonnen's D.B. Cooper suspect, whomever he is, by Chael Sonnen's admission, he was learning about parajumping, and he was learning about driving motorcycles. And at the time of the skyjacking, he was just starting out with all of that. So this guy would have been somewhat of a novice. And, I mean, I think that we're dealing with a bunch of stories that are half true and half false. But that's what I like to do on Black Box Online Radio. I want to try and separate these things. When I was reading through the comments on the videos that Chael Sonnen has made, as I said, he has his own YouTube channel under his name, Chael Sonnen, where he's talked about the D.B. Cooper story. People are pointing out that he's being extremely inconsistent. He changes things from one interview to the next. And also, they say that he has had a history of trolling. He's just doing this for attention. They think that he is just making up the story completely. And if so, I would hope that he would cease and desist completely if he is only doing it as a form of pure fiction because he needed to have a more entertaining thing to say in his post-MMA career. But, I mean, I just don't think it's that extreme. However, I just think that he definitely is perhaps caught up in the entertainment aspect of it, and that's also not a good thing. But I'm really curious what Lehman is going to share with me in the future about his observations, and we're going to keep discussing this, at least to identify Chael Sonnen's D.B. Cooper suspect. I also believe that his sister did indeed have a godfather, and this person is real and he does exist, and there are elements of the story that are true. But as far as being D.B. Cooper, it seems like the suspect might be on the weaker side. But what do you think? Is there anything at all that seems like there could be anything compelling about the story? What do you think about D.B. Cooper jumping out of the plane, landing in the national forest, and that he had a vehicle stationed by, maybe a motorcycle? He drove through the Yakima Reservation, 3 hours roughly to his home where this guy lived, and just that's it. Chael Sonnen once said that he was home in time for dinner, but I don't think that would have been possible on Thanksgiving Eve, 1971. He must have meant home in time for Thanksgiving dinner, because D.B. Cooper jumped at night and jumped into cloud cover. He would firstly have to land, find the motorcycle, and then drive approximately 3 hours, according to Chael Sonnen's timeline. Challenge questions for you. Number 1, do you believe the story? Do you believe that that's a real family story from the Sonnen household, or is it just a piece of pure fiction that somebody made up? I mean, you won't hurt my feelings either way. You can put your ideas in the comment section down below and let me know what you think. Question number 2. Do you think that D.B. Cooper could have specifically pinpointed the exact place to jump where he could have landed and maybe found a boat, a vehicle, or a motorcycle? I mean, a motorcycle vehicle. I should have said a boat, a car, or a motorcycle. Or how about an accomplice who could have been waiting for him? Question number 3. Do you think a beginning parajumper could have survived this? A beginning parachutist could have survived the jump? I would love to know what you guys think. You can put your ideas in the comment section down below, and you can hear more about this story on Chael Sonnen's YouTube channel, former UFC fighter, MMA fighter, who has written a couple books, actually, and he's been very public with this, but he withholds a lot of information. And what do you think of my assessment that the conversations really happened, but this guy might not have been D.B. Cooper? Although I will continue to explore this, and I will continue to look at Lehman's findings, because I'm at the point where I want to know who this guy is, who Sister's godfather was, at the very least. But that will be all for me now. Anybody can write the show at blackboxonlineradio@AOL.com. You can also get me on Facebook. My personal Facebook is in the description box. And there is always BlackboxNed88 over on Instagram. And I will see you over there. Until next time.